We are back from the Statehouse now with Massachusetts State Senate Minority Leader Bruce Tarr, and full disclosure, a longtime friend. And Senator, thank you for coming back on again.
Well, thanks, Rick. It's always good to be with you. And full disclosure, you were one of those educators that made a huge difference in my life, and I think we always need to offer thanks.
Appreciate that.
Teachers. So thank
I work with some great people that helped me along the way, so that's very nice to hear. Speaking of educators, you recently were awarded a major presentation by the Massachusetts Association of School Committees as Legislator of the Year. So congratulations, and tell me a little bit about that, what it means.
Well, thank you. I was honored to receive that award from the school committees, Rick, all across the state, because these are the folks that are charged with providing education to our kids every day, which is one of the most fundamental things that our government has a responsibility for doing. And so to be recognized by them was extremely humbling for me, and I'm so grateful. And it wasn't just the recognition. What they said in giving the award was particularly important to me, Rick, because they stressed bipartisanship, trying to build collaborations, trying to be professional, trying to be respectful. And those are very important elements of the way that I try to operate each and every day. And to have them as a third party recognize that methodology and place a value on it expressly was an incredibly wonderful thing. And as I think you may know, the award was actually presented in front of the portrait of Horace Mann in the Senate reading room. And I know you know that Horace Mann led the effort to have public education in this country. So there was a lot of symbolism behind that and a lot of substance as well. And I was just so honored to receive the award. And, you know, over the years, we've worked on a number of different educational issues, whether it be transportation, special education, trying to make sure that budgets are properly funded. And I'm very proud of all of those things, but very proud also to have it be recognized by many of the partners that I've worked with. And of course, as you know, Rick, there's even a deeper dimension to this in that my brother was a lifelong educator, and I was had the benefit of his leadership and his mentorship over the years. And so this meant a lot to me in a lot of different ways.
Well, he is missed, and of course, he was a long-time educator in Gloucester and assistant superintendent as well, and a very nice guy, as are you. And I wonder, the word that jumped out and hit me in the face, you mentioned that they part of the ceremony concerned bipartisanship. And I think there's some of that that's missing today, obviously, but it is important with respect to role models and how that reflects on kids growing up from K to 12 and beyond. So that's very important, I think. And you and other legislators in Massachusetts have worked well together across the aisle, and I think that should be a model for the country.
I completely agree, Rick. And how frustrating is it that we just had the federal Congress fighting again to agree over just keeping the budget for the federal government funded. And even at that, it's only for a very short period of time. So we worked very hard in the Massachusetts Senate to respect our differences and our ideological differences and other differences, but still find a way to move forward. And we worked very hard at that. And I'm very proud of the example that I think the Senate sets each and every day. And Rick, you'd be interested in knowing that I began the day at the Stewart School in Topsfield reading to a class of third graders. And I tried, you know, in a way to try to express to them when I explained what I do, that I do it with a lot of great people who have different perspectives. And I tried to distill that into something that would be meaningful to third graders. But I think it's so much of the culture of our country that needs to be emphasized, that we've always had political differences. We've always had differences of opinion, but we cannot let them paralyze us because it will jeopardize our role as leaders in the world.
Yeah, and I think extremism on any angle, right, left, or center, is just got to be dealt with, and has to be done. But that, I don't want to get into that. Congratulations on that. That's wonderful. You deserve it. We are always proud here on Cape Ann of the work that you do, and we see you everywhere all the time. I know that you must have 2 or 3 other clones who appear because you know it's 24 hours a day, and I'm serious. You're just everywhere all the time. That's incredible. But changing the subject, if I may, we mentioned something in our pregame warm-up here, something about one of my all-time heroes, and that's a native Massachusetts person named Abigail Adams. Tell me about that.
Well, so this is, Rick, a very interesting thing because it describes how the day goes sometimes. So this morning I was reading to kids in Topsfield, and then later in the morning I was able to join Senate President Spilka and many of my colleagues, and we unveiled a portrait of Abigail Adams that will hang in the Senate lobby. And the reason that that's important, Rick, one of the many reasons that it's important, is that there has never been a woman represented in the art in the Senate chamber, in the Senate reading room, and nor up until relatively recently, and we talked about this off air a little bit, was there a person of color. And so the Senate has made great strides. You know that a number of years ago, back 2019, 2018, we had embarked on the restoration of the Senate chamber. It had fallen badly into disrepair. And as part of that initiative, there was a collective decision made, and I was happy to serve on one of the committees that worked on this effort. There was a collective decision made that there had to be representation of a person of color in the chamber. As you know, there are many busts around the chamber of folks that are very notable in their contributions to the development of our country and to our state. But again, there was no person of color. And the person that the Senate decided upon, and it was a collective decision, was Frederick Douglass, who had been a slave and who has a lot of ties to Massachusetts. And not only did we place the bust of Douglass in the Senate chamber, we also placed a quote high above the chamber, above the gallery that is used for the visitors that are coming to visit the Senate president. And I'm very proud of that. But today, we took another giant step forward and we added a woman. And of course, it would be hard to argue with anyone other than Abigail Adams as being the best choice for that to get us started.
You know, historically, everybody identifies or at least knows Martha Washington, but reading Abigail Adams' biography, reading the letters she had with John Adams back and forth, it's obvious that she really could be the genius behind John Adams. She was absolutely brilliant and one of the first patriots that just doesn't get enough recognition as far as I'm concerned.
I completely agree. And I've been advocating for Abigail Adams to be represented somewhere at the Statehouse and in the Senate chamber for a long time. And it was great. And Rick, one of the wonderful parts of the ceremony was one of the presidents of one of the historical societies that was present was reading from those letters that you and I have both read, many of, where Abigail and her husband John are corresponding. And the relevance of her comments, not only to the time when they were written, when our nation was being formed, but even to today,
Yes.
was striking. And talking about the need for inclusion, talking about the need to have a government that's fair and equal for everyone. And of course, we all remember the famous quote about "Don't forget the ladies."
Yes.
And of course, you know, we talked a lot today at the ceremony about how the revolution for gender equality that she started is continuing even today.
Massachusetts, gotta love it, man. That is so great. I'm not a historian, I'm not a history teacher, but I love that stuff. That's awesome. I got to visit there sometime and see what that all looks like. Senator, anything else you want to mention?
Well, you know, first of all, Rick, you're welcome anytime. And I know that you and Bill Newell have been into my office, at least for one visit. And you know you're always welcome back. And we'd always love to give you a tour of the chamber with the two new additions that I talked about. The last thing, Rick, that I would want to mention is that we just passed a very important date in the legislature, and that is Joint Rule 10. And the Joint Rule 10 date is intended to make sure that all of the committees report all of the bills that were filed in a timely way so that they can be considered by the legislature. And one of the things that sometimes happens, Rick, is that a committee will say, we need a little bit more time on a particular bill or a particular group of bills. And that's what we're doing right now. Excuse me, is the committees have filed for extension orders. And when those come before the body, I always have a colloquy with the relevant committee chair to say, why do you need more time? What is the subject matter of the bills that you're asking for more time on? And what is the purpose of seeking an extension? And Rick, that's a very interesting debate because folks have a right to know why the deadline wasn't met and what's happening with those bills so that bills aren't just in limbo. And so we've made tremendous progress in the Senate over the last few years on this subject of limiting the number of extension orders, the volume of extension orders, the time of the extension orders, and that's been through collaboration, bipartisan collaboration. And so that's the season that we're in right now. We have a number of additional extension orders to continue with, even as other things are happening. And one of those other things that's happening is that the House and Senate Committees on Ways and Means are now holding hearings around the state relative to the budget for the upcoming fiscal year. And we can talk more about this later, Rick, but one of those is going to be in Gloucester. And so we'll be happy to provide the details with that as they become more finalized.